What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 schedule preview and projected records. Mississippi State is up next. Before we get to 2023, let's look back at 2022. Here was the schedule from 2022, playing Memphis and Arizona in the non-conference. Nice challenges there, playing decent teams in the non-conference. Also, they played Bowling Green and ETSU, so there was no big challenge for them. But again, Memphis, Arizona, decent teams in the non-conference. Then you look at who they played out of the Eastern Division. They had to play Georgia, and they play Kentucky every year, of course. They lost both of those games. The Bulldogs only lost two games in the division. This was really a sneaky, quiet team last year, going 9-4. But a schedule that was actually fairly tough. Again, having to play Georgia out of the East and not a bunch of cupcakes in the non-conference. Going 9-4, really solid year for them last year. But let's look ahead to 2023. They will play Southeastern Louisiana. They'll play Arizona again, this time at home. They'll play Western Michigan and Southern Miss. So you look at that non-conference slate, not all that tough. Arizona, it seems to be a team that's getting better, a program on the rise, but I think the Bulldogs still should be favored in that game. Western Michigan, Southern Miss, not horrible group of 5 teams, but again, those are games that Mississippi State should win. And then you look at who they play out of the East. They'll play South Carolina on the road and then play Kentucky. Of course, they play Kentucky every year. So I think, South Carolina is going to be more than likely a pretty good team, but avoiding Tennessee and Georgia, that's a win, and a non-conference schedule that really is not very tough. Not too bad of a schedule for Mississippi State. Let's look at each week. And then they will start off with that game against Southeastern Louisiana on September the 2nd, and then Arizona after that on the 9th. That's a must-win for Mississippi State. Again, Arizona's a program getting better. I think that'll be a competitive game. It was fairly competitive last year. Playing at home, you have got to take care of business there. They've got to start off 2-0, because then after that, take a look at the schedule. They'll play LSU on September 16th. It'll be a home game, but LSU is looking like a really good team this upcoming season. And then South Carolina on the road after that. That is a tough place to play. They will be a quality team as well. And then Alabama after that on September the 30th. So a very tough stretch there to end the month of September with LSU, South Carolina, and Alabama. Again, very big challenges there. And they play Alabama early in the year. Normally they play late. They used to always play right before maybe they would, not the week before rivalry week, but the week before that. They would always play in the month of November anyways. And this year they're playing in September. So that's different. They get a little bit of a break. They get Western Michigan next, but then it's right back to the grind. On the road at Arkansas. Then it's on the road at Auburn. Very tough back-to-back games there. Tough places to play. Arkansas figures to be pretty good. Auburn, we don't really know too much about how good they're going to be, but I expect them to be better than they were last year. And playing in Jordan-Hare, that'll be a tough one. So back-to-back road games there. Those will be tough. Then it's Kentucky on November the 4th. That's a big one there. That's a game you really need to win. Then Texas A&M on the road on the 11th. That'll be a tough game as well. So you look at their SEC games, and again, there aren't any easy wins. They don't get to play Vanderbilt, and there really aren't many easy wins in the SEC now anyways. But yeah, it's going to be a tough 8 games in the SEC. Southern Miss after that, then they'll close things out on Thanksgiving once again in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss. They'll get that one at home this year. But it's just the grind of the SEC. It's going to be tough, and they've got some tough stretches here where it's South Carolina, Alabama, or go before that, LSU, South Carolina, Alabama. 3 very tough games in a row. Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, 3 tough games in a row. Their bye week comes between Western Michigan and Arkansas. Not an ideal time, I don't guess, for the bye week. It is right there in the middle of the season, but you maybe want to break up one of these 3-game stretches with the bye week. That would make it a little easier. But those stretches there, and I said 3 games, go even further to Texas A&M, a 4-game stretch, and 3 of them on the road. Arkansas on the road, Auburn on the road, Kentucky, and then Texas A&M on the road. That is a very tough 4-game stretch there. So a 3-game stretch and a 4-game stretch that are very difficult. The overall schedule, if you compare it to some other teams, this is probably not going to be one of the toughest schedules in the country. But the way it sets up with those 2 stretches, it's going to make for a pretty tough schedule for Mississippi State in 2023. All right, so again, here's the schedule, and we're going to give you these projections now. This is the scale that we use, and you see if it's a 50-50 game, that's a game that I think 40 to 60%, those are games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. Under 20 or over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be 20 or more points. 20 to 29, 71 to 80%, those are games where I think it'll be a double-digit spread, 10 to 20 points. 30 to 39, 61 to 70, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points, kind of in that range. So we'll start with the easy games. I think you've got a few here. Southeastern Louisiana, Western Michigan, Southern Miss. You know, Southeastern Louisiana is going to be closer to 100%, whereas Western Michigan and Southern Miss would be, you know, down there closer to 90%. But still, these are pretty much guaranteed wins. Should be easy wins for the Bulldogs, and you can go ahead and take those 3 and count them as wins. Next, we go to really no games in that 71 to 80% range. No games where I think Mississippi State will be favored by 10 to 20 points. But I think Arizona, they'll be favored by about a touchdown in this game. Arizona is kind of an up-and-coming program. They are starting to build some momentum out there. Of course, they played last year at Arizona. Mississippi State won that game fairly easily. This time it's at home. So I do think the Bulldogs will be favored, but not an easy win. I think this will probably be a pretty close game. And so, again, we're going to put it there in the 61 to 70% range. But, again, I think that is a game that Mississippi State will definitely be favored in by about a touchdown. All right, how about games that they're going to be underdogs in? I think Alabama and LSU are both probably games where they'll be double-digit underdogs. If you've watched my other projections, I actually had LSU in that 30 to 39% range, but I wanted to be consistent. You know, Alabama and LSU are both kind of in that top tier. They're looked at as top tier teams going into this next year, and we're not really trying to make predictions in these videos. We're just trying to group the teams together. You know, I feel like Mississippi State has a better chance of beating LSU than Alabama. Not necessarily because I think Alabama's the better team. It's just the matchups, and you know, you look at the history. Mississippi State they can't seem to beat Alabama, but they've had some success against LSU. And so because of that, yeah, I think it's more likely that they beat LSU than Alabama. But just going off of these numbers and these projections, those teams are kind of in the same tier. And so I felt like to be consistent with that, both of those teams should be in the orange. I think Mississippi State will probably be, you know, a 14-point underdog to Alabama and maybe like a 10-point underdog to LSU. So those games are both kind of close, especially with LSU to maybe being in the yellow, but I'm going to put them both there in the orange and say that Mississippi State will probably be double-digit underdogs, even though they'll be at home. That's what makes it so tough. If these are road games, they would definitely be in the orange, but playing at home, you could make an argument that they could be only an 8-point underdog potentially. Again, I'm viewing Mississippi State as in that tier of being a borderline top 25 team this year. And how about games where they'll be about a touchdown underdog? I'm going to go with South Carolina and Texas A&M. I think they're in a pretty close tier with these two teams. And again, I've said this before. I think Texas A&M is really going to turn things around this year. I do expect them to be a top 25 team. But the fact that these games are on the road, that's why they're in the yellow. If these games were at home, they would be considered 50-50 games for me. But playing on the road, I think they will be about a 6 or 7 point underdog in both of these matchups. So yeah, I think those are games that Mississippi State will be underdogs, but not huge underdogs. They'll have a chance for sure to win those games. So you kind of look at the rest here: Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Ole Miss. Those are your 50-50 games. They'll probably be a slight underdog in the road games, Arkansas and Auburn. Auburn's kind of tough to figure out. We don't know how good they're going to be. And they'll probably be a slight favorite against Kentucky and maybe Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they might be underdogs in that game. But again, those are your 4 50-50 games. So we average this all out. We use 50% for those games. For South Carolina and Texas A&M, we're going to use 35%. Arizona, 65%. We average those games out. We count The green games as wins. LSU and Alabama are counted as losses. And when you put all the numbers in, the projection comes out to be 6-6. So a 6-6 projection for Mississippi State, closer to 7-5 than 5-7. If we did change, say, LSU to be in the yellow, that would up the projection to 7-5. So they're really close to being at 7-5. But at the end of the day, again, with all these numbers put in, the projection for Mississippi State in 2023 is 6-6.